Charles Darwin said, "False facts are highly injurious to the progress of science, for they often endure long, but false views, if supported by some evidence, do little harm, for everyone takes a salutary pleasure in proving their falseness, and when this is done, one path towards error is closed and the road to truth is often at the same time opened." The greatest intellectual tragedy is how scientists have no interest in proving the falseness of the central claims of scientism. On the contrary, they defend them with the zealotry of religious fanatics. The idea of false facts is a very interesting one. Science often talks as if all facts are true, but if false facts exist, then that means that any factual claim is immediately rendered uncertain because we may or may not be dealing with true facts. No wonder Nietzsche said, "There are no facts, only interpretations." Science is not an account of the facts. Rather, it is an interpretation of selected facts, and other inconvenient facts are totally ignored. Eugene Wigner said, "Someone came to me and expressed his bewilderment with the fact that we make a rather narrow selection when choosing the data on which we test our theories. How do we know that if we made a theory which focuses its attention on phenomena we disregard some of the phenomena now commanding our attention, we could not build another theory which has little in common with the present one but which, nevertheless, explains just as many phenomena as the present theory?" It has to be admitted that we have no definite evidence that there is no such theory. For once, we find a science student asking a great question. Such a rare thing. What the student is really getting at is the need for a universal theory that explains all phenomena. Science doesn't operate that way. It rejects universals and thus produces one highly particular theory after another, which it then tries to crowbar together. It can't unify its particular theory of Einsteinian relativity with its particular theory of quantum physics. It has no universal basis for both theories. Hilariously, scientists actually believe that their rejection of universalism will pay off and that their obsession with particularism will miraculously result in the unification of all their disparate, particular theories. It never will. This is why science's hatred of philosophy is so dangerous. By refusing to accept the clear and critical thinking that philosophy can afford, when done properly, it cuts itself off from the methods that would allow it to reach a unitary conclusion. Ontological mathematics, by total contrast, is totally integrated with rationalist philosophy and logic and was designed from the get-go to be a universalist theory and to ignore distracting particulars. Darwin said, "I believe there exists, and I feel within me, an instinct for the truth, or knowledge or discovery, of something of the same nature as the instinct of virtue." Delusional? Darwin was no friend of the truth. No one who relies on their senses ever is. Evolutionary theory would be far superior if it rejected mindless Darwinian evolution in favor of mindful Hegelian evolution. Darwinism is about matter, particulars, randomness, percepts. Hegelianism is about mind, universals, determinism, concepts. Scientists have such a narrow and sterile notion of evolution. Pathetic, really. Their minds are closed as those of religious fanatics, whom they so closely resemble. Darwin said, "It has sometimes been said that the success of the origin of species proved that the subject was in the air, or that men's minds were prepared for it. I do not think that this is strictly true, for I occasionally sounded not a few naturalists, and never happened to come across a single one who seemed to doubt about the permanence of species. That's ironic given that Alfred Russel Wallace, not Darwin, was the true originator of the theory of evolution through natural selection." Darwin said, "The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. Most people are instinctual, not rational. They are System 1 instinctual thinkers and not System 2 rational thinkers. They are ruled by the reptilian brain stem and mammalian limbic system, not the human neocortex. Feelings are instinctual. Feelings rule the human race. Love and light. Namaste. Peace, man. Darwin said, I have called this principle, by which each slight variation, if useful, is preserved, by the term of natural selection. Why is it not teleological selection? It is preserved because it is advancing the inherent purposes of existence. Mental existence has purpose. Material existence does not. Materialism is meaningless, purposeless and pointless. Matter does not and cannot evolve. When materialists talk about evolution, they are really talking about something else. There is no sense in which one collection of mindless, lifeless, meaningless, purposeless atoms can be more evolved than another collection of mindless, lifeless, meaningless, purposeless atoms. One collection may be more materially complex than another collection, but that doesn't mean it's more evolved. It just means that it exhibits higher complexity. A computer is highly complex. In what way is a computer evolved? It didn't evolve at all. It was made by mind. Only minds can evolve. Darwin said, my mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding general laws out of large collections of facts. Thinking always involves converting large collections of particulars into universal laws. Darwin, like all scientists, was a bottom-up thinker, a particularist, driven by induction. The best thinkers are top-down universalists, driven by deduction. Darwin said, to kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. The error of materialism must be killed. What a service to humanity that will be. Darwin said, it is a cursed evil to any man to become as absorbed in any subject as I am in mine. Or glorious gift and privilege. Darwin said, it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. In the end, the most intelligent is the most adaptable. The problem for the intelligent is that they have so often served the agendas of the rich and powerful, and they have also so often been targeted by the much more numerous stupid who hate their intelligence. Darwin said, if the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. Darwin was exactly right about that. What causes poverty if not institutions? No human sets out to be poor. If they were raised in a system committed to optimizing them, they would never be poor. Instead, they are raised in a system that optimizes a few and treats the rest as scum. Darwin said, man is descended from a hairy, tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in its habits. Indeed. Most people still look as if they would be happier swinging through trees, or living in caves. Darwin said, the mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. Darwin wasn't a rationalist. Any analytic a priori thinker can solve the problem of eternal and necessary existence. It doesn't rely at all on evolution, on the temporal and contingent, on sensory observation. Darwin said, what a book a devil's chaplain might write on the clumsy, wasteful, blundering, low, and horribly cruel work of nature. Yet look at all the wonders it has achieved. Darwin said, we stopped looking for monsters under our bed when we realized that they were inside us. Humans have generated the most incredible assortment of monsters, all projections of themselves. Darwin said, intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. Does that involve killing others? Intelligence has proved remarkably good at producing weapons that kill others at a prodigious rate. Darwin said, blushing is the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. It sure is. Well, apart from the fake smile. Darwin said, one general law, leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely, multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. That's Darwinism in a nutshell. The strongest live and the weakest die, the survival of the strongest. That was the system practiced by the Spartans. Evan Andrews wrote, "Infanticide was a disturbingly common act in the ancient world, but in Sparta this practice was organized and managed by the state. All Spartan infants were brought before a council of inspectors and examined for physical defects, and those who weren't up to standards were left to die." The ancient historian Plutarch claimed these ill-born Spartan babies were tossed into a chasm at the foot of Mount Taygetus. If a Spartan baby was judged to be unfit for its future duty as a soldier, it was most likely abandoned on a nearby hillside. Left alone, the child would either die of exposure or be rescued and adopted by strangers. Babies who passed inspection still didn't have it easy. To test their constitutions, Spartan infants were often bathed in wine instead of water. They were also frequently ignored when they cried and commanded never to fear darkness or solitude. According to Plutarch, these tough love parenting techniques were so admired by foreigners that Spartan women were widely sought after for their skill as nurses and nannies. Are non-Spartan systems anti-Darwinian? Are they opposing evolution? This is Sparta. And never forget it. The narrator in the movie Idiocracy said, "As the 21st century began, human evolution was at a turning point. Natural selection, the process by which the strongest, the smartest, the fastest, reproduced in greater numbers than the rest, a process which had once favored the noblest traits of man, now began to favor different traits." Most science fiction of the day predicted a future that was more civilized and more intelligent. But as time went on, things seemed to be heading in the opposite direction. A dumbing down. How did this happen? Evolution does not necessarily reward intelligence. With no natural predators to thin the herd, it began to simply reward those who reproduced the most, and left the intelligent to become an endangered species. The #1 movie in America was called Ass. And that's all it was for 90 minutes. It won 8 Oscars that year, including Best Screenplay. Bring back the Spartans.